The notification chimed on my phone at exactly 9:47 p.m. A FaceTime call from Celia, my wife of 8 years. I could hear the cackling laughter in the background before I even answered. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Hey, Evan. Celia's face appeared on screen, flushed from wine, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite being at what she called girls' night. Behind her, I could see Rachel, Kim, and Jessica crowded around a high-top table at Vino's, that pretentious wine bar downtown where they held court every Thursday. Having fun, ladies? I asked, settling back into my recliner. The house felt enormous when she wasn't here, which was increasingly often these days. Oh, we're having a blast, Rachel chimed in, leaning into frame. Her dark hair was pulled back in that severe bun she always wore, like she was perpetually ready to teach someone a lesson. Actually, Evan, we've been talking about you. The way she said it made my stomach tighten. There was something predatory in her smile, something that reminded me of sharks circling wounded prey. All good things, I hope, I replied, keeping my voice light. Kim's face appeared next to Rachel's, her cheeks red from alcohol and excitement. Well, that depends on your perspective, she giggled. Jessica pushed into the frame, holding her phone up like she was recording. Everything was content for her mommy blog these days. Evan, we've been doing some serious girl talk tonight. And we've reached a unanimous decision, Celia announced, her voice taking on that corporate tone she used when firing people at her HR job. It's time for us to get divorced. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting something like this for months. What I hadn't expected was the audience, the performance of it all. The way they were all grinning at me through the screen like they'd just delivered the punchline to the world's cruelest joke. We've decided, Rachel repeated, emphasizing the word. Celia deserves so much better than what she's getting at home. You're holding her back, Evan, Kim added, nodding sagely like she was dispensing wisdom instead of destroying someone's marriage over Pinot Grigio. I sat there for a moment, letting the silence stretch. They were all staring at me, waiting for me to break down, to beg, to give them the reaction they wanted. Instead, I found myself thinking about the credit card statements I'd been finding, the late nights, the way Celia had been dressing lately. Not for me, but for someone else. So none of you care that she's been seeing your husbands? I asked quietly. The laughter died instantly. 4 faces stared at me through the screen, expressions shifting from smug satisfaction to confusion to something that might have been fear. What did you just say? Rachel's voice was sharp now, all pretense of friendliness gone. You heard me, I said, standing up and walking closer to the camera. Celia, should I tell them about Brian? Or Derek? Or should we start with the photos I found on your phone? Celia's face went white. Evan, you're being ridiculous. You're just trying to... Am I? I interrupted. Rachel, when was the last time you checked Brian's Tesla's GPS history? Kim, does Derek still claim he's working late at the office on Tuesdays and Fridays? The silence on their end was deafening. I could see them looking at each other, doubt creeping into their expressions. Nice try, Evan, Jessica finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. You're just trying to deflect. Am I? I smiled for the first time all evening. Well, I guess we'll find out soon enough. Enjoy the rest of your girls' night, ladies. Something tells me it might be your last one together. I ended the call and set my phone down on the coffee table. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or sadness. For the first time in months, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Power. I walked to my home office and pulled out the folder I'd been building for weeks. Bank statements showing charges at hotels I'd never been to. Credit card receipts from restaurants where Celia claimed to be having work dinners, but the amounts were clearly for 2 people. Screenshots of text messages I'd recovered from her old phone before she'd accidentally dropped it and gotten a new one. And then there were the photos. The ones she thought she'd deleted, but had backed up automatically to our shared cloud account. Celia with Brian in his Tesla. Celia with Derek at that motel on Route 9, Celia with men I didn't even recognize. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was collecting married men like trophies, and her best friends' husbands were apparently her favorites. I'd been planning to confront her privately, maybe try counseling, maybe just file for divorce quietly, but she'd chosen to humiliate me publicly to make our marriage's end into entertainment for her friends. Well, if Celia wanted a public divorce, I'd give her one she'd never forget. I opened my laptop and started typing. If she wanted to play games, it was time she learned that I'd been playing chess while she was playing checkers. The first email went to Sam Rodriguez, my best friend and the owner of CrossFit Iron Valley, where I worked out every morning. Sam had connections all over town, and more importantly, he had a mouth bigger than the Hudson River when it came to gossip. The second email went to Mrs. Keller, our 73-year-old neighbor who knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. She'd been dropping hints about Celia's visitors for weeks. The third email was the most important one. It went to a private investigator I'd found online, a former cop named Danny Martinez who specialized in domestic situations. I'd been hesitant to hire him before, but Celia had just forced my hand. By the time I went to bed that night, the wheels were already in motion. Celia came home at 2 a.m., stumbling and reeking of wine and guilt. She tried to climb into bed next to me, but I was already up and dressed. "Going somewhere," she slurred. "Gym," I said simply. "Early workout." "Evan, about tonight?" "Don't," I cut her off. "We'll talk when you're sober. And Celia? You might want to call Brian and Derek. Tell them they should probably have a conversation with their wives before someone else does." I left her standing there in our bedroom, confusion and the first hint of fear creeping across her face. The game had begun. Sam was waiting for me in the gym parking lot at 5:30 a.m., 2 cups of coffee in his hands and a grim expression on his face. "You look like hell," he said, handing me one of the cups. "Feel worse," I admitted. "Did you get my email?" "Yeah, I got it. Jesus, Evan, are you sure about this?" I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the photos, Celia and Brian Martinez, Rachel's husband, in a passionate embrace outside the Marriott downtown. The timestamp showed it was taken last Tuesday, the same night Rachel had posted on Facebook about having a quiet night in with my amazing husband. Sam's jaw tightened. That son of a bitch. I've known Brian since high school, Rachel too, for that matter. "There's more," I said, scrolling through the evidence I'd compiled. "Derek Thompson, Kim's husband. 3 different motels over the past 2 months. And these are just the ones I can prove." "What do you want me to do?" "Nothing illegal," I said quickly. "Just let people know what kind of woman they've been defending, starting with the morning crowd here." Sam nodded slowly. The 6 a.m. CrossFit class was legendary for its gossip network. By noon, half the town would know that Evan Driscoll's cheating wife had been caught red-handed. "What about the wives?" Sam asked. "What about them?" "Rachel and Kim. They're going to be destroyed when they find out." I thought about the smug expressions on their faces the night before, the way they'd laughed as they helped my wife humiliate me on camera. "They made their choice," I said. "They decided to get involved in my marriage. Now they get to live with the consequences." We worked out in relative silence, but I could see Sam's mind working. He was already planning how to spread the word, who to tell first, how to maximize the impact. It was one of the things I'd always loved about him. When Sam was on your side, he was all in. After the workout, I drove to my construction site. I'd been the site supervisor for Brennan Construction for 5 years, overseeing everything from residential developments to commercial projects. It was good work, honest work, and it had given me the financial stability that Celia seemed to take for granted. My crew was already setting up when I arrived. These were good men, hard-working guys who'd been with the company for years. They knew me, trusted me, and more importantly, they knew my situation. "Boss," called out Tommy Chen, our lead electrician. "You look like you got hit by a truck." "Worse," I said. "I got hit by reality." I gathered the crew for our morning briefing and, almost without thinking about it, found myself telling them about the previous night. Not the details, just the basics. My wife wanted a divorce, her friends had ambushed me, and I'd discovered some uncomfortable truths about the whole situation. "No shit," said Mike Sullivan, our plumber. "Celia's been stepping out?" "More than stepping," I said. "She's been running marathons." The men exchanged glances. In a small town like ours, news traveled fast, especially among the blue-collar crowd. These guys went to the same bars, shopped at the same stores, and knew the same people as everyone else. "What are you going to do?" asked Frank Kowalski, our carpenter. "I'm going to give her exactly what she asked for," I said. "A divorce, but I'm going to make sure everyone knows why." By lunchtime, my phone was buzzing with messages. The first was from Danny Martinez, the private investigator. "Got your email. Can meet this afternoon, have some preliminary information you'll want to see." The second was from Mrs. Keller. "Evan, dear, I think we need to talk. I've been keeping track of your wife's visitors, and you're going to want to see my notes." The third was from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Rachel Martinez. We need to talk, now." I smiled as I deleted that one without responding. Rachel would have to wait her turn. I met Danny at a diner on the other side of town, a place where we were unlikely to run into anyone I knew. He was exactly what I'd expected, mid-50s, gray hair, the kind of weathered face that came from years of dealing with people's worst moments. I've been doing some preliminary work since you contacted me, he said, sliding a manila folder across the table. Your wife isn't very careful about covering her tracks. The folder contained more photos, more receipts, more evidence of Celia's affairs. But it also contained something I hadn't expected, a detailed timeline showing that this had been going on for over a year, not just the few months I'd suspected. She's got a type, Danny observed. Married men, successful, with something to lose. It's not just about the sex, Mr. Driscoll. It's about the power. The power? She gets off on the risk, on knowing she can destroy these men's marriages whenever she wants. Look at this pattern. She never stays with any one guy for more than a few months. She moves on before they can get too attached, but not before she's got enough evidence to ruin them if they try to end it first. I stared at the photos, seeing my wife in a completely new light. This wasn't just cheating, this was predatory behavior. There's something else, Danny said. I did some digging into her work situation. She's been having affairs with subordinates too. If her company finds out, she'll be fired immediately. Sexual harassment, abuse of power, the works. How do you know all this? I have contacts in a lot of places. Your wife made enemies, Mr. Driscoll. People who'd be very happy to see her get what's coming to her. I paid Danny his fee and drove home with the folder on my passenger seat. My phone had been buzzing constantly. More messages from Rachel, several from Kim, and one from Jessica asking if I wanted to talk things through like adults. The only message I answered was from Sam. Words getting around. Rachel Martinez showed up at the gym looking for you. She's pissed. Good, I texted back. Let her stew. When I got home, Celia was waiting for me in the kitchen. She'd clearly been crying, but there was anger in her eyes too. What did you do? She demanded. I told the truth, I said simply. Isn't that what you wanted? Honesty in our marriage? You had no right to. I had every right, I interrupted. You made our marriage public last night. You involved your friends in our personal business, so now everyone gets to know the whole story. Evan, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, we can... No, I said, pulling the divorce papers I'd printed that afternoon from my briefcase. You were right last night. It is time for us to get divorced. I've already filed the paperwork. Her face went white. You can't be serious. Dead serious. And Celia? You might want to call Brian and Derek. Their wives are going to find out soon, and it would be better if it came from you. How could you do this to me? I looked at my wife. Really looked at her. For what I knew would be one of the last times. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. I didn't do this to you, I said quietly. You did this to yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I heard her car start and speed away, probably heading to one of her lovers for comfort. I poured myself a beer and sat down to wait. Tomorrow, the real fun would begin. The next morning brought chaos. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Rachel Martinez calling for the 10th time. I finally answered on the 11th ring. You bastard, she hissed without preamble. How could you do this to me? Good morning to you too, Rachel, I said calmly. How's Brian this morning? Still claiming he was working late last Tuesday? The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When she spoke again, her voice was shaking. I don't believe you. Check his phone, I suggested. Check his credit card statements. Check the GPS history in his Tesla. Or better yet, ask him directly. Brian's not nearly as good a liar as he thinks he is. Even if there's some truth to what you're saying, you had no right to destroy my marriage. I didn't destroy your marriage, Rachel. Your husband and my wife did that. I just made sure you knew about it. We were trying to help Celia. She was miserable with you. She was miserable because she was living a lie, I shot back. And you helped her do it. You sat there last night and laughed while she humiliated me, never bothering to ask why she really wanted out of our marriage. Rachel was crying now. What am I supposed to do? I have kids, Evan. I have a life with Brian. That's between you and your husband. But Rachel, next time you decide to get involved in someone else's marriage, maybe make sure you know what's actually going on first. I hung up and immediately got a call from Kim Thompson. Evan, please tell me this isn't true, she sobbed. Which part? The part where your husband has been screwing my wife, or the part where you helped her ambush me last night? Derek swears nothing happened. He says you're lying, that you're just trying to hurt us because you're angry. Kim, I have photos, I have hotel receipts, I have text messages. Your husband isn't just cheating on you, he's been bragging about it to his buddies at the gym. That last part wasn't entirely true, but it had the desired effect. Kim's sobs turned into something closer to a wail. Why are you doing this to us? You did this to yourselves when you decided to play judge and jury with my marriage. Actions have consequences, Kim. You're about to learn that lesson the hard way. I hung up and headed to the gym. Sam was waiting with a grim smile. It's like a bomb went off, he reported. Rachel showed up here at opening, screaming at Brian in the parking lot. Half the morning class got a free show. What did Brian say? Not much. Hard to talk with your wife's hand around your throat. We worked out while Sam filled me in on the morning's drama. Apparently Rachel had confronted Brian the night before after my phone call. He'd initially denied everything, but when she'd threatened to check his phone, he'd broken down and confessed. Not just about Celia, Sam said. Turns out your wife wasn't his first affair, but Rachel found out about at least 2 others. Jesus. Gets better. Kim Thompson showed up about an hour after Rachel left. She'd found Derek's burner phone hidden in his toolbox. Guess what was on it? I didn't need to guess. The look on Sam's face told me everything. Photos? Videos. Apparently Derek likes to document his conquests. Kim saw everything, not just him with Celia, but with 3 other women too. I felt a moment of something that might have been sympathy for Kim and Rachel. They'd been as deceived as I had, maybe more so. But then I remembered their faces on that FaceTime call, the way they'd laughed as they helped destroy my marriage, and the sympathy faded. What about Jessica? Haven't seen her yet, but word is she's been calling around, trying to do damage control. Apparently she's worried about how this affects her brand. Jessica's brand was her mommy blog, where she portrayed herself as the perfect wife and mother living the ideal suburban life. Having her friends' marriages implode in a cheating scandal wouldn't fit that image. After the gym, I drove to the construction site. The crew was already buzzing with the news. Apparently Tommy Chen's wife was friends with Kim Thompson, and the story had spread through their social circle like wildfire. Boss, Mike Sullivan called out as I approached. You hear about Derek Thompson? What about him? Kim threw him out last night. He's staying at the Motel 6 on Route 9, same place he was taking your wife, according to the rumors. The irony wasn't lost on me. Derek was now living in the same cheap motel where he'd been cheating on his wife. What about Brian Martinez? Rachel's got him sleeping in their guest room while she decides whether to file for divorce. Apparently she's already called a lawyer. I spent the morning reviewing blueprints and coordinating with subcontractors, but my mind kept wandering to Celia. She hadn't come home the night before, and she wasn't answering my calls or texts. Not that I particularly wanted to talk to her, but we had practical matters to discuss. The house, our joint accounts, the divorce proceedings. Around lunchtime, I got my answer. Mrs. Keller called with an update. Evan, dear, I thought you should know. Your wife came by this morning with a moving truck. She took quite a few things, clothes, furniture, some of your electronics. Did she say where she was going? She mentioned something about staying with a friend until she could find her own place. Though between you and me, I don't think she has many friends left after yesterday. That afternoon, I decided it was time for a more direct approach. I drove to Celia's office at Brennan Insurance, the mid-size firm where she'd worked her way up to HR director over the past 5 years. The receptionist, a young woman named Ashley, whom I'd met at several company parties, looked uncomfortable when she saw me. Hi, Mr. Driscoll. Are you here to see Celia? Is she in? Well, yes, but she left instructions that she wasn't available for visitors today. I'm not a visitor, I said pleasantly. I'm her husband. We have some urgent matters to discuss. Ashley looked torn between company policy and basic human decency. Before she could decide, Celia appeared from the hallway behind the reception desk. Evan, she said coldly, what are you doing here? We need to talk, privately. She glanced around the reception area, clearly aware that several of her coworkers were watching with interest. Fine, my office. 5 minutes? I followed her down the hallway to her corner office, a space I'd helped her decorate when she'd gotten the promotion 2 years ago. Now it felt like enemy territory. You've caused enough damage, she said as soon as she closed the door. Rachel and Kim aren't speaking to me. Jessica's pretending I don't exist. Are you happy now? Ecstatic, I said dryly. Though I have to ask, where exactly did you sleep last night? Not with Brian, I hope. I hear Rachel's got him on a pretty short leash. Celia's face flushed. That's none of your business. Actually, it is. We're still married, and we have joint assets. I need to know where you're living so I can have papers served. I'm staying with a friend. Which friend? Because it seems like you're running out of those pretty quickly. She didn't answer, but the expression on her face told me everything I needed to know. Celia had burned her bridges with her female friends, and her male friends were all dealing with their own domestic crises. There's something else we need to discuss, I said, pulling out a folder Danny Martinez had given me. Your employment situation. What about it? Well, it seems your company has some pretty strict policies about relationships between supervisors and subordinates, policies that you've been violating for quite some time. The color drained from her face. You wouldn't. I wouldn't what? Tell the truth? Report illegal behavior? Celia, you've been sexually harassing your employees. That's not just a firing offense. It's potentially criminal. Those relationships were consensual. Were they? Because I have statements from 3 different men who say they felt pressured to sleep with you to keep their jobs. Men who were afraid to report you because you controlled their employment. This was a slight exaggeration. Danny had mentioned that some of her subordinates felt uncomfortable with her advances, but I didn't have formal statements. Yet. You're bluffing. Am I? Want to test that theory? Celia sank into her chair, the fight going out of her. For the first time since this all began, she looked genuinely scared. What do you want? She whispered. I want you to sign the divorce papers without contesting anything. I want you to move out of our house permanently, and I want you to stay away from Brian Martinez, Derek Thompson, and anyone else's husband. And if I do that, you'll keep quiet about the other thing? I pretended to consider it. Maybe. Depends on how cooperative you are. It was a lie, of course. I had no intention of letting her off the hook that easily, but I needed her to think she had some control over the situation. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, I start making phone calls. I left her sitting in her office, looking smaller and more defeated than I'd ever seen her. It should have felt like a victory, but mostly it just felt sad. The woman I'd married 8 years ago wouldn't have recognized the person sitting behind that desk. The next evening, I was grilling burgers in my backyard when the doorbell rang. Through the front window, I could see 3 figures on my porch: Jessica, Rachel, and Kim. The gang was back together, but this time they didn't look like they were having fun. I opened the door with a beer in my hand and a smile on my face. Ladies, what a pleasant surprise. Here for the barbecue? Cut the shit, Evan, Jessica snapped. She looked haggard, her usually perfect mommy blogger appearance disheveled and tired. We need to talk. About what? About the fact that you've destroyed 3 marriages in 2 days, Rachel said. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she was wearing the same clothes she'd had on yesterday. About the fact that you're ruining innocent people's lives. Innocent? I laughed. That's rich, coming from you 3. Can we come in? Kim asked quietly. She looked like she'd aged 10 years since Tuesday night. I don't know. Are you planning to ambush me again? Because I have to say, the last time you ladies ganged up on me didn't work out so well for any of us. Please, Kim said. We just want to understand what happened. I stepped aside and let them into my living room. They sat on my couch, the same couch where I'd been sitting when they delivered their ultimatum 2 nights ago, and looked at me expectantly. So, I said, settling into my recliner, what can I do for you? You can explain why you felt the need to destroy our families, Rachel said. I didn't destroy anything. I revealed what was already broken. That's not the same thing, Jessica protested. You could have handled this privately. You could have talked to us, warned us. Like you talked to me before deciding my marriage was over, I interrupted. Like you warned me before staging that little intervention on Tuesday night. The 3 women exchanged glances. For the first time since I'd known them, they looked genuinely ashamed. That was different, Rachel said weakly. How? How was that different? We were trying to help Celia, Kim said. She was miserable. She was miserable because she was living a lie, I exploded, my carefully maintained composure finally cracking. She was miserable because she was cheating on me with your husbands and feeling guilty about it. And instead of encouraging her to come clean or get counseling or do literally anything constructive, you helped her blame me for her problems. We didn't know, Jessica whispered. You didn't want to know, I corrected. You wanted to play the supportive friends, the wise advisors, the women who had it all figured out. You wanted to feel superior to the poor, clueless husband who couldn't keep his wife happy. That's not fair, Rachel said, but there was no conviction in her voice. Isn't it? Tell me, Rachel. When was the last time Brian came home late from work? When was the last time he was evasive about where he'd been or who he'd been with? Did you ever ask questions, or did you just choose to believe whatever story was convenient? Rachel's face crumpled. I thought he was just stressed about work. And Kim, I continued, turning to Derek's wife, all those business trips Derek took, all those weekend conferences, did you ever check to see if they were real? Kim shook her head, tears streaming down her face. And Jessica, I said finally. Miss Perfect Life. Miss Everything is Amazing. When was the last time you actually looked at your friends' marriages instead of just using them as props for your blog posts? Jessica had gone pale. My blog has nothing to do with this, doesn't it? How many posts have you written about girls' night? How many times have you talked about the importance of female friendship, of supporting each other through thick and thin? Did you ever think about what you were actually supporting? We were supporting our friend, Rachel said. You were supporting a lie. You were enabling someone who was destroying multiple families, including her own. And when I tried to tell you the truth, you laughed at me. The room fell silent. Outside, I could hear kids playing in the neighborhood, the sound of normal families living normal lives. It seemed like something from another world. What do you want from us? Kim asked finally. I don't want anything from you. It's too late for that. There has to be something, Jessica said. Some way to fix this. Fix what? Your marriages, your friendships, your reputations. Ladies, some things can't be fixed. Some mistakes have permanent consequences. So that's it? Rachel asked. You're just going to let our families fall apart? I'm not letting anything happen. This was always going to happen. I just accelerated the timeline. You could have given us a chance to work things out with our husbands, Kim said. Like you gave me a chance to work things out with my wife? That shut them up. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of everything that had happened settling over us like a shroud. Brian wants to try counseling, Rachel said finally. He says he's willing to do whatever it takes to save our marriage. And Derek's begging me to take him back, Kim added. He's promised to cut off all contact with other women, to be completely transparent about everything. Good for them, I said. Maybe they mean it. Maybe they've learned something from all this. Do you think... Jessica started, then stopped. Do I think what? Do you think there's any chance for them? For any of us? I considered the question seriously. Brian Martinez and Derek Thompson had both been serial cheaters, men who'd betrayed their wives repeatedly and only shown remorse when they had been caught. But people could change, couldn't they? I don't know, I said honestly. That's between you and them. But I will say this. If you do decide to try to work things out, you need to go into it with your eyes open. No more willful blindness. No more choosing comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. What about you and Celia? Kim asked. What about us? Are you going to try to save your marriage? I thought about my wife, about the woman I'd fallen in love with and the stranger she'd become. I thought about the lies, the betrayals, the complete destruction of trust that had brought us to this point. No, I said simply. Some things are too broken to fix. The three women left a few minutes later, looking defeated and lost. I watched them walk to their cars, Jessica's pristine SUV, Rachel's practical sedan, Kim's aging minivan, and wondered if they'd ever be friends again after this. Probably not. Trust, once broken, was nearly impossible to repair. I went back to my grill, but the burgers were burned beyond saving, just like everything else in my life these days. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to meet. Tonight. It's important. C. Celia wanted to talk. After everything that had happened, after all the damage that had been done, my wife finally wanted to have a conversation. I texted back, Denny's on Route 9, 1 hour. It was time to end this once and for all. Denny's at 9 p.m. on a Thursday night was exactly what you'd expect. Half empty, fluorescent lit, and depressing. Perfect for the conversation I was about to have. Celia was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her back to the wall. She looked terrible, exhausted, pale, and wearing the same clothes she'd had on yesterday. For a woman who'd always prided herself on her appearance, it was a shocking transformation. You look like hell, I said, sliding into the booth across from her. Thanks, you look great too. The waitress came over and we ordered coffee. Neither of us was hungry, but we needed something to do with our hands. So, I said when we were alone again. Here we are. Here we are, she agreed. You said it was important. Celia nodded, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug like it was an anchor. I signed the papers. All of them. I'm not going to contest the divorce. Smart move. I also cleared out my desk today. I'm taking a leave of absence from work. Indefinitely. I raised an eyebrow. Voluntarily. Let's just say my boss and I had a conversation about my future with the company. It was mutually agreed that some time away would be beneficial for everyone involved. So someone had talked. Maybe one of her subordinates had finally found the courage to speak up, or maybe word had just gotten around. Either way, Celia's career was effectively over. Where are you staying? Extended stay America on the highway. Glamorous, I know. What about Brian, Derek, your other friends? Celia's laugh was bitter. What friends? Brian won't return my calls. Rachel's got him locked down tighter than Fort Knox. Derek's too busy groveling to Kim to even acknowledge I exist. And the rest of them, well, let's just say I'm not very popular right now. Can't imagine why. Don't, she said sharply. Don't you dare sit there and act like you're innocent in all this. I never claimed to be innocent, but I didn't cheat on you with multiple people. I didn't lie to you for months. I didn't recruit your friends to help me humiliate you in public. You destroyed my life. I revealed your life. There's a difference. Celia stared at me across the table, and for a moment I saw a flash of the woman I'd married, vulnerable, lost, looking for someone to blame for her problems. Why? She asked quietly. Why did you have to make it so public? Why couldn't you just file for divorce quietly and let us both move on? Because you didn't give me that option. You made our marriage into a public spectacle. You involved people who had no business being involved. You tried to humiliate me in front of your friends. I was scared, she whispered. I didn't know how to tell you that I wasn't happy, that I hadn't been happy for a long time. So you decided to cheat instead? It wasn't supposed to happen like this. It started with Brian. We were both at that conference in Albany. We'd been drinking, and it just happened. I felt so guilty afterward, but also so alive, like I was finally doing something for myself instead of just going through the motions. And then Derek? Brian introduced us. He said Derek was discreet, that he understood the situation. It felt safe, like we were all in the same boat. What boat was that? The cheating asshole's boat? Celia flinched. We were all unhappy in our marriages. We were all looking for something we weren't getting at home. So, why not just get divorced? Why the elaborate deception? Because I was a coward, she said simply. Because divorce is messy and expensive and public, and having an affair was easy and exciting and private. Or so I thought. We sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Around us, the diner hummed with quiet conversation and the clatter of dishes. Do you hate me? Celia asked finally. I considered the question. Did I hate her? I was angry, certainly. Hurt, definitely. But hate? No, I said. I don't hate you. I'm disappointed in you. I'm angry at you, but I don't hate you. Do you think you could ever forgive me? I don't know. Maybe someday, but not now, and not anytime soon. What if I got help? What if I went to therapy, figured out why I did what I did, made sure it never happened again? Celia, it's too late for that. The trust is gone. Even if you became a completely different person tomorrow, I'd never be able to look at you without remembering what you did. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. So that's it? 8 years of marriage, and it's just over? It was over the moment you decided to cheat. Everything since then has just been cleanup. I loved you, she said. I know it doesn't seem like it, but I did love you. Maybe you did, but you loved the excitement more. You loved the thrill of sneaking around, of having secrets, of living a double life, and that's not something I can compete with. The waitress refilled our coffee cups, giving us both a moment to compose ourselves. What happens now? Celia asked. Now we get divorced. You move on with your life, I move on with mine. We try to learn from our mistakes and hopefully don't repeat them. Will you tell people about why we're getting divorced? I won't volunteer the information, but if someone asks me directly, I'm not going to lie to protect you. She nodded, accepting this. What about Rachel and Kim? Jessica? What about them? They hate me now. They blame me for destroying their marriages. Their marriages were already destroyed. They just didn't know it yet. That's not fair. Brian and Derek might have cheated with me, but they were cheating anyway. I didn't force them to do anything. No, but you didn't discourage them either, and you certainly didn't think about the consequences for their wives. Neither did they. You're right, but you're not married to them. You don't owe them loyalty or honesty. You owed those things to me, and you chose not to honor them. Celia finished her coffee and stood up. I should go. Probably. She hesitated, like she wanted to say something else, but then just nodded and walked away. I watched her leave, noting how small and defeated she looked. It should have felt like victory. After everything she'd put me through, seeing her brought low should have been satisfying. Instead, it just felt empty. I paid for the coffee and drove home to my empty house. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of rebuilding my life. I'd figure out what came next, how to move forward, how to trust someone again someday. But tonight, I just wanted to sit in my living room and mourn the death of my marriage. 3 months later, Celia came by to pick up the last of her things. The divorce was finalized, quick and clean, just like she'd promised. She looked different, thinner, quieter, more grounded. She told me she was in therapy, working a lower-level marketing job in Albany, trying to rebuild from zero. I told her I was actually doing better than okay. We both admitted, in our own way, that we were sorry and needed to figure out who we were alone. Then she drove away without looking back, and for the first time, the house felt like mine, not ours. Life moved on. Our old friend group completely imploded. Rachel and Brian were in counseling, trying to rebuild something that would never look the same. Kim filed for divorce from Derek after discovering a long pattern of affairs. Jessica turned the whole mess into blog content and lost her friendships in the process. At Murphy's Pub, I told Sam and the guys I wasn't ready to date yet. I needed to learn who I was as a single man. Later, Derek called out of nowhere to apologize and ask how to handle being a cheater on the other side of the fallout. I told him the truth. You can't fix broken trust. Only accept consequences, do the work, and maybe earn someone's trust someday, though probably not Kim's. Little by little, peace replaced anger. Mrs. Keller next door reminded me my marriage didn't fail because I wasn't enough, but because Celia chose deception and warned me not to let her choices make me afraid to trust again. Months later, Rachel apologized at the grocery store and said I'd been right about comfortable lies versus uncomfortable truths. She told me I deserved to be happy. Maybe someday I'll believe that enough to risk dating again. For now, poker nights with friends, a quiet, honest house, and the simple feeling of sleeping without suspicion are enough. I lost a marriage, but I got something just as important back. My self-respect, my clarity, and a life that finally feels like it belongs to me.